The great thing about excellent comic book movies is how people get excited about the characters and crave for more content. People are now replaying the Arkham video game series, going to their second or third viewing of the Batman, and perhaps even picking up a few comics here and there. Director Matt Reeves, who is an avid Batman fan, has kindly provided his own list of recommendations on comics that inspired his creative process, and our man Robert Pattison has also provided his own list of resources he used. Now, a lot of comic book related websites tend to recommend either the most classics of the classics or something that's very recent and modern. While modern comics are blessed with gorgeous artwork by master craftsmen like George Capullo or Gary Frank, a lot of modern comics tell very simple stories that only seem special due to the artist doing the heavy lifting. With the Batman having a plus 90 years of history, there are a lot of hidden gems hidden that might not get the spotlight they deserve. That's where I come in to help you. I don't want to make the 27th video that recommends some modern comic books like Batman Zero Year, Batman Earth 1 Trilogy, Batman War of Jokes and Riddles, or Batman The Court of Owls. I wanted to take this opportunity and recommend something that might fly under the radar. My criteria for these comics were the following. They must involve, in some capacity, the villains from the movie: Catwoman, Falcone, Riddler, or the Penguin. They must also have a detective story aspect to them, as that was the strongest trait of the Batman. Those were the rules I set for myself, so without further ado, let's hit the gasoline on the Batmobile and get right through these recommendations. Catwoman When in Rome is a spin-off comic of one of the most popular Batman stories of modern times, The Long Halloween. Both Christopher Nolan and Matt Reeves have cited the comic book as a source for their movies. And just because I like to support the underdog, or in this case the undercat, that's why I'm recommending Catwoman When in Rome. If you are a fan of The Long Halloween and the Batman movie and want to know more about the femme fatale herself, this comic is for you. The story is quick and definitely the easiest comic you can read from this list. And with probably the best art, all thanks to Tim Sale's superb, unique style. Catwoman sets out to find more about her family roots, and thus she and the Riddler are off to Rome, the home country of the Falcone crime family. Rome is beautifully illustrated, as is Catwoman's many outfits. Really, that's the plot. The Riddler comes off an office coat monkey rather than the sinister Machiavellian villain he is, but never let first impressions fool you. While on their investigations, they come across the rest of Falcone crime family itself alongside some other Italian gangsters. So the villains Catwoman faces might not be escapees from Arkham Asylum, but Gotham's weapon industry sure has landed on the shores of Italy. So again, if you got interested in Catwoman's past and wish to learn more about this bitch queen of a diva, check this comic book out. And thanks to today's lowered expectations of reading comprehension, DC Comics have nicely renamed this comic book for all future releases as Batman The Long Halloween, Catwoman When in Rome. So that no one could ever doubt for a moment that this is part of the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale continuation. Thank you, marketing department. And next. starting. This over 400-page comic book collection gives you both the Riddler alongside young adventurous Batman stories. But before we get deeper into the actual content, let me give you a brief introduction on who Matt Wagner is and how I became a fan of his comics. For me, Wagner is the pulp comics guy. Don't know what pulp is? Like Tarantino taught us during the 90s, pulp fiction used to be these short but straight to the point stories. The core idea was that an anti-hero was starring them, but despite the emphasis on action, these stories didn't throw out all the possible psychological and theological discussions the stories could be wrapped in. The city was saved from either gangsters or mad scientists by brutally murdering these said villains. This is how pulp works. Depth in storytelling was not forgotten, and neither was the joy of violence. American pulp industry had numerous masked Avengers starring in, with some of its most popular were Doc Savage, the Phantom, Zorro, Green Hornet, and the Shadow himself. Ultimately, it was the Batman which triumphed over all these other vigilantes, as he had it all. The name, the look, the rogues gallery, he triumphed where others had failed. We all know and love Batman. That's why you're here, friend, isn't it? So, Wagner is a man who respects the past. He's written and drawn comics involving Zorro, Green Hornet, Sandman, and the Shadow, and he even co-authored the official sequel to Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, the Django Zorro crossover. So, yeah, that's how he achieved the title of that pulp's comic guy for me. The collected stories mostly involve a younger Batman, set somewhere between Batman Year One and The Long Halloween. Like the Batman, this Batman has been operating in the shadows for about 2 years. James Gordon is still only a lieutenant and Batman's only ally. Batman is waging a war against dirty cops and drug dealers such as Falcone and Maroni. It's definitely something that's very close to the movie in terms of setting. Matt Wagner is also the illustrator for the main stories. He has a distinct look on his characters and clearly has an enjoyment of drawing the comic world reminiscent of the Jazz Age. The main villains of the stories are the Mad Monk and Hugo Strange. The latter, whom you might remember as the promoted lead antagonist of Arkham City video game. Strange here doesn't know Batman yet, but instead is obsessed with creating the perfect Ubermensch. It's always funny how it seems people tend to think he's some kind of a Nietzschean kraut, while he's just truly a mad scientist. The Mad Monk is a vampiric leader of his own cult, the Brotherhood. When the city offers no hope for a better tomorrow, the weakest of us start taking drugs and other substances to soothe our pain. Loneliness can trigger people to join even the most dangerous of brotherhoods. Not all of them have to be fringe online forums of the dark web. So, if a big-titted Catwoman ever introduces herself to you in Gotham, unfortunately, it just might be too good of a dream to be true. Because what the Mad Monk is offering is even worse than the eye drops. Like a proper vampire, the Mad Monk doesn't live in some manor or skyscraper. He lives in a bloody castle just outside Gotham. See how this shit gets me excited? It's Batman going full on vampire hunter mode in a giant castle facing off wolves and zombies. God damn, this is why I love comics. Then, as an added bonus, you also get a Riddler story on this collection. Reading the Riddle Factory today feels like reading some form of a prophecy. Riddler has his own game show where he has abductees answering riddles. If the abductee fails, then Riddler reveals their skeletons in the closet. That makes the audience just hate the players. It's Twitter's social justice crusades, but it's happening almost 2 decades before social media. You can really reimagine this story in your head with the movie's Riddler, and instead of having a TV show, just imagine it's a live stream. Once again, Riddler is parading like he's some kind of a social justice warrior, but behind all that showmanship is just a narcissistic plan for his own nefarious goals. So that's it for this collection, where Matt Wagner shines is his overall quality. These aren't some epic mega events like Court of Owls that change Batman's world forever, just solid character-driven stories delving into his psyche and early years against crime. However, if you want something modern and epic, then here's the next one. This is the most modern and so-called epic comic book I will be recommending on this video. Comic superstar Warren Ellis reunites with his partner in crime artist Brian Hitch for a Batman epic. Warren Ellis is probably most well known on his work on Netflix Castlevania anime, alongside being the man who created the Mr. Knight style for Marvel's Moon Knight. But for me, these two are the ones who created one of my all-time favorite comics, The Authority, where the not Justice League are totalitarian fascists keeping world order alive through their superior strength. Within the past 40 years, the slow gradual rise of terrorism has made individuals like Osama bin Laden as enemies of nations themselves, much like the Joker in Dark Knight. Now with the Batman, it's the Riddler who's become a terrorist. Being a mere costume villain just isn't cutting it these days, right? Because I felt that the Riddler in the movie was almost made into a pure anti-Batman villain, where he presents the chaos that is the Batman's order, the same way villains like Bane, Prometheus, Rat, King Owl, Owlman and the fabulous Killer Mutt do. Heck, King Owl even happens to be an orphan, just like the Riddler. So here I present you a comic where the villain has both the brains and the brawls, as Batman goes up against the Scorn. Scorn, like the Riddler, isn't just a persona, it's a terrorist cell ready to attack the innocent, to scorn them of everything and leave nothing but dust in its wake. The best parts come with the dynamic Batman and Alfred Pennyford share. Ellis knows that action comics need that good pause of humor, tenderness, and thoughtful debate on the efficiency of Batman's crusade. If you are curious to ask why people want more Alfred Pennyford in the next Batman movie, this comic should give you an answer. He's a charming, witty, and tender man who provides the warmth and laughs to the sterner side of Batman. The exchanges Batman and the MI6 agent have are terrific, and you get a great sense of father and son relation between these two, alongside being respectable partners in their war against terror, of course. The comic feels and tastes like a movie adaptation pitch. It's got everything you'd expect from a modern graphic novel. Stunning splash pages, modern superhero comic book style, tons and tons of action, where Batman uncovering the Scorn terrorist cell and figuring out who's the head honcho. Next.
Breaking news.
While Matt Reeves took obvious inspirations for Geoff Johns' Batman Earth 1 series, as evident by the fact Martha Wayne's maiden name and family are now the Arkhams, I, however, have a theory of my own that Matt Reeves got to take a look at the cancelled Batman Year 1 movie adaptation. These two movies share so many similarities that I just cannot think otherwise. So hear me out on this bonus succession. Both movies draw heavily from Frank Miller's Dark Knight. It was the cancelled movie script that had Batman literally living in the shadows. Batcave was an abandoned Wayne family railway station that was connected to the sewers of Gotham. Batman pretty much worked on all of his gadgets by himself, while Pattison was smart enough to utilize his family's heirlooms. This Batman wanted nothing to do with the money and was living off of scraps. He had forsaken his rich heritage to live amongst the plebs, where the action was most heated. He was like some goddamn psychopath in a trench coat. Speaking of fashion, the concept art for this Batman had him wearing a high collar cape, which again is the exact same as what Pattison wears. Batman would have worn his father's signet ring, which is a stylized V symbol, leaving the mark of the bat on the fearful and cowardly lot. Very reminiscent of Zorro or the Phantom, and this element was later used in Batman v Superman. The Batmobile is also a muscular car, but granted that's how it's always supposed to have been. I'm just glad movies today do not need to focus on the toy sales aspect of production anymore. It just helps deliver a better overall experience. Oh, and just to add one more convenient similarity, the Catwoman in this movie would have also been played by an African American. Funnily enough, the lead actor for the role of Batman would have been Joaquin Phoenix, who 2 decades later took the role of Harley Quinn of Hate. Now, at the end of the day, regardless whenever Reeves was inspired by the cancelled movie or not, all I'm saying is that if you like this dark version of Batman, then give the script a shot and read it yourself. Make your own judgments, and it's definitely an interesting take on the character. Now, let's get back to the comics. This is the shortest comic book story I am recommending, but is by far one of the most devilishly dark and best stories showcasing just how cruel the Riddler can be. Kidnapping and drugging people, murdering both the innocent and his own henchmen left and right, the Riddler once again showcases how he has no respect to human life, besides that of his own. The sociopathic megalomaniac has turned into Satanism as he attempts to tame the bat demon Barbatos that roams the streets of Gotham. Not even babies are safe from Riddler's dark rituals. I originally read this comic book about a decade ago, as it was used as a resource for Grant Morrison's Batman. The man behind the graphic novel Arkham Asylum was writing a story that tried to incorporate as much as Batman lore as possible into one epic tale. From Dark Knight Dark City, Morrison found the demon Barbatos. Now, rereading this comic book, it definitely stands on its own as one of the top Riddler stories. So, I don't think that's a high bar to cross. This story, just more than any other, truly showcases what makes the Riddler so dangerous. He cannot adjust his worldview to anyone else's shoes, and finds everyone beneath him. He doesn't see the world as a joke, but rather, he sees himself as a god who can punish anyone who isn't smart enough for his riddles. Which is why he's going after the demon Barbatos himself. I guess as mortals just weren't enough for him. And to succeed in his goal, Riddler brings forth the Black Phillip himself. Just like with the Batman's Crave, this short story highlights the great dynamic between Batman and the Butler. The dynamic duo are solving Riddler's riddles together, just like in the movie, and you can't read these dialogue exchanges without smiling or laughing at Pennyworth's wits. You also get the added treat of learning about Gotham's history. Is Gotham truly cursed? Is there a demon named Barbatos roaming Gotham and trying to find a suitable host for him? Has Batman been nothing more than a pontiff for a great demon? All I can say for certain is that Riddle's evil matches that of the devil. Speaking of which, let's get to the last comic book recommendation. The last, but definitely not the least, is Batham Gothic from one of my all-time favorite comic book authors, Grant Morrison. Coming off from the blockbuster success of Arkham Asylum graphic novel, Batman Gothic tells the story of a young detective Batman discovering some hidden truths behind Gotham past as the living dead walk the streets. While this story doesn't have the Riddler, Penguin or Catwoman, you get an early Batman fighting off the dirt of Gotham, with Cloud Johnson from The Dark Knight Returns fame being the illustrator of the story. Mr. Whisper, the man without a shadow, once a big-time gangster from the past, is walking amongst the living again. The scums of Gotham murdered him decades ago and dumped his body into the Gotham River. Now Gotham's very own Jason Voorhees is coming back, as even hell didn't want anything to do with him. He's back and murdering the worst of the worst, one by one. The cowardly lot have nowhere else to turn, except to make amends with the Dark Knight. Mr. Whisper doesn't just want to settle the score with the mob, but he feels insulted by the Sin City itself. Gotham must perish under a plague that has been brewing over 100 years inside a tomb in Gotham's cathedral. Yeah, I know comic books are supposed to be a form of escapism from the perils of the real world, but what better way to cure your bat fever by reading about a comic that gives you a stronger dose of bat Wuhan flu? Remember kids, what doesn't kill you only makes you
stranger.
To top it all off, Mr. Whisper seems to have connections to the Fane family and even Bruce Wayne himself. Is it once again Thomas Wayne not knowing who he should be friend with? It's a jigsaw puzzle between Gotham, the Waynes, and the man without shadow. It's Batman's job to investigate his family's past and that of Gotham. This investigation leads him across nations as he must travel the globe to find his solutions. Nothing will get into Batman's way, and the answers he finds might turn his whole world upside down. This comic book will very much surprise you, and you might even find the ending itself unbelievable. And that's a wrap. Sorry for being so coy about a few of these. I really did not want to go too much in depth with these stories, as that would spoil too many delicious details. Be sure to also check out Matt Reeves and Robert Pattison's Batman comics recommendations. I will be making one more Batman comic recommendation video, and to give you a hint, it's one of the Robert Pattison recommendations. So see you next time on the same bat time and same bat channel.